We were meeting with a potential client and we were going over all of our security services, explaining, what each thing does, why we recommend all these practices be put in place. And the person we were talking to, they were like, I don't know if we really need this. I don't really think that we're, going to get hacked or whatever. And we're almost all the way through the meeting, almost toward the end of the meeting. And I can tell they're not going to bite, right? Like they're not interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden somebody comes in the room and says, what are y'all doing? Like, what are you up to? And we're like, what do you mean? We're having a meeting. What do you mean? What are we up to? So the guy goes, we're getting hacked right now. Like right now in the middle of the meeting, like somebody is hacking into our systems. Like, is that y'all? They really thought we were doing it just to prove a point so we could sell our products. But it was just such crazy timing. They actually got compromised in the middle of the sales meeting where we were trying to sell them on cybersecurity. So
that's unreal. I mean, the timing there, unbelievable.
It's never happened before, never probably will happen again.
Yeah,
but it's an amazing story.
Yeah.
And I will say we did get the sale. So they're still a customer of ours. And I think they still give us a side eye a little bit, wondering if it was if we had anything to do.
Hey there, it's Mike Langford. Welcome to another episode of the 6x6 Lock Podcast, a secure money movement podcast for the private markets. On this episode of the show, Todd Cyril and I are joined by Ray Mitchell, the Chief Information Security Officer at Sigma Information Group, one of the country's most respected cybersecurity and managed IT firms. Ray has been in the field for nearly 2 decades. He actually taught himself how to program as a kid and has been breaking in and fixing systems ever since. Today, he sits on the front lines every single day, helping businesses protect themselves from attacks that are getting faster, smarter, and harder to see coming. This is a fantastic conversation for anyone in the private markets who wants to understand what firms are actually getting wrong about cybersecurity right now, why email is still the biggest attack surface nobody is talking about, and what you can do this week to make your firm dramatically harder to hit. You're absolutely going to love this conversation. Now, before we get to the conversation with Ray, please do make sure you take a moment to subscribe to the 6x6 Lock Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, the YouTubes, or wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. And if you have a question or suggestion for a topic or a guest, hit me up. I'm basically at Mike Langford everywhere on the internet, or you can just shoot us an email, podcast@6lock.com. Okay, let's get to the conversation with Ray Mitchell. Well, Ray Mitchell, Todd Cyril, welcome to the 6x6 Lock Podcast. It's so awesome to see you gents here right before America celebrates its 250th. Awesome stuff.
Happy to be here.
Yeah. Happy 250, America. This is amazing.
Exactly. And I got to tell you, Ray says he's happy to be here, but we heard right before we click record that he is planning on going on vacation to the Caribbean. So we're very jealous of you, and you're probably like counting down the minutes before this podcast and the week is over.
Oh, there's no question yet. He's drifting. No pun intended, but he's drifting.
Yeah,
as we speak. Just a little
exactly. If I had known, I would have brought some like rum drinks here and I have some sort of, Hawaiian shirt. Well, I guess not Hawaiian shirt. Yeah, no, I could have. Next time.
You're in good company. Yeah,
you should have sent me a bottle of rum along with the microphone that you sent.
No doubt about it.
This is actually true, and I'm like a huge rum guy. I do love rum; is like one of my jams. So now, of course, I've told Todd this, and I've told a few other guests. I am a food lemming, and that includes drinks. So now I'll be like having a raging craving for rum. So that'll probably happen this weekend. Why not? What better way to celebrate America's 250th.
250, baby. That's right. I mean,
that's right, baby.
Better than having rum on the weekend than on the show. This could turn into karaoke in a hurry.
That's true.
Well, we are way overdue for having a beverage inspired show, like where we're all hanging out and drinking on the show. That actually makes it a little more fun. You never know what's going to happen. So, well, all right, let's get into it. I've been really looking forward to this conversation because I think, Ray, you're one of the rare guys. I mean, not in the sense that like you meet lots of people who have had this passion since they were young for doing something, and they, get to be an adult and they're doing the thing that they've always been passionate about and they had an interest in. And it's actually not as uncommon in the investing world, I think, in the, in the private equity and private market space. A lot of people got the investing bug, the interest in money and interest in, things like that young, and they just continued it into their adult years. But you're one of the first people I met that you're like, hey, when I was a young guy, I was kind of interested in this security stuff, internet security stuff, and I pursued it. So I wonder if maybe we can kind of kick it off there. If you can kind of give us a little bit of like your origin story as a security superhero, if you will, to like, how did this come about?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I got my first computer when I was pretty young. I'd say maybe 8 or 9 years old, and everybody was really excited when we first got it in my house because, I have multiple siblings. I'm the youngest of 4, and everybody wanted to crack at this thing. And it wasn't long, maybe a couple of weeks before everybody got bored with it except for me. And it just stuck with me. I'd spend time at the library reading books on computer programming, taught myself to program at a really young age. So I got into building things, and then it wasn't long after I started building things that I just started kind of breaking them and seeing how I could break them. So that's kind of how I got started in this, and it just kind of kept going from there,
Yeah.
Ray, do you remember what kind of computer that was by chance?
It was a Packard Bell. I do remember that. And it was like, I think it was Windows 3.1, I want to say.
3.1, yeah. That was the predecessor to the big 95 release where people were literally lined up around city street blocks waiting to get into the store to get this pack. You had to buy the product to take it home. Completely never other world, but quite memorable at the time. It was huge. That was a big release. Yeah.
It is. That's wild that they go down that memory lane there about like you bought software in the box, you'd have to come home and like someone had like all the floppies, or when it was a big deal, like Windows 95 came out and it had the actual CD-ROM, right? It was like the first one that came out on CD-ROM, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I went to like a Walmart or something like that, and I bought some software and I brought it home and I tried to use it and it just would not work. I mean, back then, like you never knew what you were going to get. You never knew if it was going to be compatible with your computer. It just wasn't quite as streamlined as things are these days.
Yeah, you're right about that, man. So much you would just purchase and come home and be like, first of all, like I need to have a CS degree, or I get the stuff on the computer to work, and it wasn't user friendly at all, man. I mean, you were just kind of like out of luck, man. If that stuff was not loading, I mean, who are you going to call? I mean, it was just strange times. Yeah,
exactly. So you mentioned that you started tinkering, started building stuff, having a good time, and then you're like starting breaking stuff. When did this become like, I don't know, an interest where like security was going to be your thing? Like where you wanted to understand how to be, someone who locks stuff down or tried to keep the bad guys out?
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teenager, well, a little younger than that, maybe 11 or 12, I had a group of friends online, and we all, started building things, and then pretty soon after that, we started kind of breaking each other's things, and we got into this mode of just kind of learning how that works, learning how exploits work, learning how password cracking works, and all this stuff was before there was any real security around anything. I mean, most people's passwords were like love or like life, you know what I mean? So cracking each other's passwords and things like that were pretty easy. There weren't a lot of guardrails around things back then, but no, it was always really interesting to me. And again, the industry didn't exist back then, right? So it wasn't like back then I was like, oh, I know I want to be in cybersecurity, because there wasn't a cybersecurity job. And if there was, maybe there were a few at some Fortune 500s, but it wasn't a common job. I wasn't going to go to my parents and say, I want to do cybersecurity, because they would have looked at me like I had 3 heads. But yeah, I mean, I knew I wanted to be in computers. So I started out in programming, developing websites. And then from there, I became a network engineer and started building out computer networks. And, as soon as cybersecurity became more of a big thing, I pivoted over to cybersecurity. And that's where my focus has been ever since.
Huge. That's been massively just on a trajectory.
What's really interesting is we've had a couple of guests on the show who have talked about, one in particular was talking about, listen, this isn't young guys just trying to do hacks anymore, right? Like even though like a lot of those young guys grew up to be like serious professional hackers and started to have real money behind it. But he was talking about how it's like, now it's like legit organized crime and state-based actors doing this type of stuff. I mean,
state sponsored. I mean, think about that. Yeah, bankrolled. Yeah, I mean, look, God, that's the bankroll's not some dude in his checking account. It's you have a country behind you. That's
Yeah, I mean, essentially, you kind of have like two groups. You have advanced persistent threats that are government sponsored, like China, Iran. They're sponsoring these organizations that hack into our companies and our government agencies. And then you have the crimeware people, which are kind of like what you're talking about, Mike, where it's like these guys are going to work every day with a suitcase, and they have, metrics they have to meet, and they have a boss. And if they don't, steal this amount of money or these amount of passwords per week, they get fired. So it's actually like a real job. They go to work every day and they have a boss. It's crazy.
It's unreal. It really is unreal.
That is wild to think about that. Like, and I bet you a lot of those guys and gals that are doing that are likely got their start like you did. Like they got a computer when they were young, started tinkering, and just realized that hey, I'm really good at this. And then they start breaking into stuff, and then they realize, oh, there's a job on the dark side of this equation.
Yeah, it's a bit scary, no doubt. Hey, Ray, tell me a little bit about like what stuck with you, kind of the early days, reflecting on early days, obviously pretty self-taught, that kind of shows up today in your work. What are some things, some threads there that you look back on?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's good hygiene that even back then was an important part, and even now is an important part. And I say good hygiene, I mean really the basics, right? So having a good long password and making sure you don't use that password across all of your other systems. So if you have a password set for your bank, you don't want to use the same password for your email and then use the same password for your Facebook, because if any one of those gets compromised, they can take that password, and the first thing they're going to do is try to get into all your other accounts with that password. But if you just use a different password per system, you can stop that from happening. So that's been true since the 90s, right? So it still holds true today.
Yeah.
That is interesting. I remember hearing Twitter got hacked back when it was called Twitter. And it was a pretty big one, and a lot of information got out. And it turns out it was exactly what you described. Like they figured out how to hack this one thing, and then they realized that password was reused across a whole variety of systems inside Twitter, and they were using Google Docs and things like that. And so people got into like all this really like sensitive information with relative ease of just making one little tiny crack.
It's really common because humans, we only have so much energy we can put towards something, right? So every time you go to a new system, it's like create a password, and you don't have a million passwords handy in your brain, right? You're just going to use the one you already use. So my advice is to use something like a password manager that can generate a password for you on the fly, and then just store it, and it'll automatically fill those passwords in for you when you go to those websites, instead of just trying to create a new password and remember all those passwords yourself.
And how important is it? I want to ask you, because the expert, how important is it to avoid using like information that may be easily discoverable about you in your password? So, children's names and dogs' names and that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's why it's better to just generate it from random characters and have the system fill it in, because that's the first thing people are going to do. They're going to find out information about you, and they're going to try different combinations of your dog's name and your birthday and things like that until they crack it. And with AI, I mean, they can do this at so much more of efficient pace than they used to be able to do it, when they were trying to manually do this, or even doing it from, we used to call it a dictionary list, where you'd have just a list of every word, and then you'd add some numbers to the end of them, and you just keep going until you hit whatever their password was. But now you can just do some open source intelligence gathering on people's social media and get quite a bit of information to get a couple steps ahead in that process.
Yeah.
Yeah, I asked that question just because I've seen a few different stories of people will have basic passwords like that, like, mom and kids' names or whatever that is, as their Wi-Fi password. And like, I just want it to be relatively easy. And then somebody is able to basically park right outside your street because it's easy to discover where you live.
Yeah.
Get onto your Wi-Fi. Once I'm on your Wi-Fi, I'm in, right? That type of stuff. So
yeah, unfortunately, your Wi-Fi doesn't stop at your walls. It just keeps going. So
that's crazy. So let's dive in a little bit and talk about the front lines here as it is today, right? So we've got a good kind of baseline of like, hey man, like this is a persistent threat. You mentioned during our prep call that most of the time you find new clients is they call you. They've had something bad has happened, right? This is Sigma's getting the inbound and going, all right, we need to get serious about the security thing, or we have a breach. So walk us through it. Talk us through what's the point of first contact with Sigma, and what does that typically look like?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if it's not already a warm lead coming from one of our customers that knows a guy who hears about us, it's usually through a breach, right? So somebody is freaking out because their company's been hacked. And it's usually one of two things. It's a ransomware attack where all their computers have been encrypted by malware, or they have a compromised mailbox or username and password to their system that an attacker has gotten access to. And they either, start exfiltrating information or start emailing all of your contact lists, or sit between different transactions in your accounts receivable, accounts payable, where they're trying to redirect people to pay a false invoice. And it leads to a lot of unhappy customers because they think they're paying your company, they're paying the bad guys, and they're out thousands of dollars. So soon after that, they figure out they have a problem. They reach out to us, and we come in and just take a look at what their setup looks like, take a look at the forensic side of things, look at the logs, figure out how long they've been in there, what they have access to, and start the remediation process.
I mean, does it take that though for them to come to you? Like it just, I mean, is it like a 9 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 where your clients are coming in saying, we have a massive problem here and we know that we do. And not only do we have to get this fire put out, but what do we do going forward, right? Like walk us through that. How does that happen?
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the times people don't think they're really targets, or they don't really think they have to worry about this stuff until something really bad happens like this. And a lot of times, yeah, it is. It's after the fact, after they've had a major breach. It's not, it's not a small incident. It's usually a major incident because that opens people's eyes pretty wide, right? A lot of our customers that we already have, not from coming to us through a breach, they listen to our advice. They put all these great practices in place so they prevent things like this from happening. But we do, from time to time have a customer and we make recommendations and we say, you really need to put this best practice in place so that XYZ doesn't happen. And they just don't believe it'll happen until it does. But as soon as it does, they're ready, willing, and able to listen to our advice, and they want to put all those protections in place right away. So yeah, it's usually after a major breach, unfortunately.
What's the most commonly ignored piece of advice that security professionals like yourself say people should do, but they just don't do? Like, what I'm saying? Like, there's certain things where you're like, we all know we should eat better or exercise more or whatever, but the average person doesn't eat better or exercise more, or get good sleep, right? There's got to be things that you're like, hey, we're preaching this, we're telling you to do this stuff all the time, and yet we go in there and a huge percentage of the times yep, if you would just listen to us, you would this wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, it's usually it's the basics, like having multi-factor authentication on your logins instead of just having a single username and password, having a second form of authentication through like an authenticator app or a key or something like that. That stops a lot of the attacks. Although these days, attackers are finding ways to get around multi-factor authentication. But for the longest time, if people would have just enabled that, it would have prevented 90% of attacks. And they just felt like it was too inconvenient to do for some reason. So we struggled with that for a while, and it's the simple things. It's the easy things. But anything that adds friction to the process is typically something they'll push back on. So if it's something that we can do and it's in the background and it doesn't affect their process and they don't see it happening, they'll usually listen to our advice. But if they have to change the way that they operate, that's usually when the friction comes in and the resistance comes in.
Interesting. So let's talk about what you've termed the 800-pound gorilla, email. So, it's still the killer app. Everybody uses it. We all use it. But, as you were mentioning a little bit earlier, it seems to be one of the most common areas of compromise where an attacker gets in. And there's a whole bunch of stuff they can do once they're in, right? They can just, hang out and wait to see if there's anything exciting that they can get involved in. Or there's, as you were talking about, they can start emailing people and doing all sorts of nonsense here. So it seems pretty scary if your email gets hacked and you're running payments through that email. Where do you even start when something goes awry with somebody's got into the email and starts just running amok?
Yeah, I mean, if we come in, the first thing we do is we're looking at all the logs. We're figuring out, who's been logging in from where, how long they've been logging in, what email items they might have accessed, who they've sent emails to. Sometimes they'll set up email forwarding rules where any email that comes in from a specific sender will get exfiltrated and sent off to another mailbox that they can look at. So they can also set up applications, authorized applications to connect into your environment where they can pull all of your information out without even logging in your mailbox. So those are persistence mechanisms we typically look for when we come in and do forensics work. But on the prevention side, the number one way to prevent it from happening is essentially just having what we call phishing-resistant authentication. And that just means an authentication that can't be stolen through a phishing attack. Other than that, requiring logins from a known trusted device. So if you're using, for instance, like Microsoft, and your email is through Microsoft, and you're logging into Microsoft every time you're getting your email, well, typically you're allowed to log in and access your email as long as you know your username and password, or maybe a multi-factor authentication token. But what we like to see paired with that is only allow a known, good, trusted device to authenticate in there. So even if the attacker happens to steal your password or your MFA key, they still can't log in because they're not on your device. And that stops 99% of those phishing-based attacks out there. But there is some legwork involved with that because we have to make sure every device is enrolled and managed by the IT department. And then if they do happen to want to log in from a personal device or a personal phone that we haven't already enrolled, there is some friction because they won't be able to log in with that device, right? But the good news is the bad guys won't be able to log in with that device either, right? So those are the two primary ways that we're seeing the prevention of this from happening, the account takeover prevention, as well as throwing something on top of the email security like a Sublime Security or an Abnormal Security email security platform that uses advanced AI to really analyze who you're emailing, what your patterns of communication are, who the vendors that you typically do business with are, and it can, flag things that are out of the ordinary and prevent those phishing emails from getting in your inbox to prevent the account takeover in the first place.
Ray, I think some of this is, man, it's such a common sense type practice here or policy to adopt as a company. But man, it's just shocking to me how many people like just don't have this. And this reminded me of just kind of like when I think you were pitching somebody one time, and the CEO when came in and said, "Wait a second, what's going on here? I mean, I think we just had something happen while you're here. Tell us a little about that. You got to bring this up. It's classic. I think it's amazing. It's serendipitous too.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I'm still flabbergasted at the timing of it, but yeah, essentially we were meeting with a potential client and we were going over all of our security services, explaining, what each thing does, why we recommend all these practices be put in place. And the person we were talking to, they're like, I don't know if we really need this. I don't really think that we're, going to get hacked or whatever. And we're almost all the way through the meeting, almost toward the end of the meeting. And I can tell they're not going to bite, right? Like they're not interested in this stuff.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden somebody comes in the room and says, what are y'all doing? Like, what are you up to? And we're like, what do you mean? We're having a meeting. What do you mean? What are we up to? So guy goes, we're getting hacked right now. Like right now in the middle of the meeting, like somebody is hacking into our systems. Like, is that y'all? They really thought we were doing it just to prove a point so we could sell our products. But it was just such crazy timing. They actually got compromised in the middle of the sales meeting where we were trying to sell them on cybersecurity. So
that's unreal. I mean, the timing there, unbelievable.
It's never happened before, never probably will happen again. But it's an amazing story. Yeah. And I will say we did get the sale. So they're still a customer of ours. And I think they still give us a side eye a little bit, wondering if it was if we had anything to do.
Hopefully by now they know you're the good guys.
I hope so.
Okay. What are some ways to know your email's been hacked, even if they're not like sending out stuff or malicious things? Like it's not readily apparent that malicious things are happening. Like, so, with the 6LOC clients, for instance, these are, private equity and other big players in private markets moving big sums of money, right? Talking about deals, information that maybe shouldn't be public because, again, private markets, that's what it means.
Right.
So it's like getting access to this information could be really valuable to people, or just, getting some of that social engineering information so that I could call you and say, oh yeah, I sent you that email, and do a voice spoofing or whatever. Like, What are some ways that a company can know that they may have a breach, even if they don't see any nefarious stuff happening?
Yeah, you really need to work with a company like ours. Obviously, it doesn't have to be ours, but really any good company that can set up alerting and monitoring on your systems, right, to detect things that are out of the ordinary. Like, for instance, wherever you're at, maybe you're in Texas right now, you're logged into your device. 5 minutes later, we see a login attempt from England or something like that. Obviously, that's not physically possible, right? So that's an example of just one of thousands of little things that we look at and are monitoring for that would tip us off that somebody's logging in your account that shouldn't be having access to it.
Yeah.
So we're looking for deviations from your normal behavior, right? We're analyzing all of those audit logs, all of those things that are coming in, looking for any deviations. And then that raises an alert on our side, and we'll go in and investigate it. And, if it's a takeover, we immediately reset the password, shut the account down, and take care of it. So,
yeah. Is your team leveraging AI to really kind of fight that today? Or when you talk about like the monitoring and also weighing and looking at and going through, like obviously you're going through and analyzing some of the alerts that come in. I mean, there's different coded alerts, of course. Is AI really kind of leveraging and helping you guys do this today? And my other question around the AI is like, man, just kind of what are your bumpers like, and what do you advise around that AI? How do you, when someone says, well, yeah, you're using AI to protect that, but AI versus AI in a way, but how is yours safe?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're not using AI to defend at this point, you're fighting a battle with two hands tied behind your back, because all the attackers are using AI at this point. All those phishing emails that are coming in, they're not written like somebody with poor grammar, poor English anymore. They're written really well, and they're doing that with things like ChatGPT, right? They even have LLMs like Gen AI models specifically designed for hacking and for phishing. So these models are designed exactly to do, the damage that these guys are doing, right? So we have to use AI on our side. It's the only way we can keep up. We use AI to analyze all those logs that are coming in, analyze all the patterns of behavior, search for vulnerabilities in applications before the attackers find them, and then do the actual remediation at times, right? So we have agents that we created that will automatically take action on accounts. If we determine the account is compromised, our agent will automatically reset that password and shut that account down and take that action much faster than any human analyst would be able to do. So yeah, we're absolutely utilizing AI on the defense side.
It's fascinating. How AI is like just so ubiquitous right now, and everybody is thinking hard about it. How do you advise companies think about their own AI usage for security? Like, you're using it as a crime fighter, crime stopper, and then the bad guys are using it. But of course, everybody who's listening to or watching this episode is using it in their business, right? And so there's lots of vulnerabilities just that arise by giving power to the machine to do some thinking and creating on its own, right? So do you have any specific guidance you offer for firms that are like, hey, be careful of this, and this when you approach using AI in your business?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing, I guess I'd say the first thing, it's kind of table stakes, is you want to make sure whatever you're using, they're not training on your data, right? So you don't want to use a free ChatGPT or a free Claude, because all your data is being ingested and it's training their models. And that information might show up on somebody else's screen down the line. And obviously, you don't want that to happen with proprietary information. So make sure you sign up for an account and you have that training turned off, right? And then the second thing is just making sure you have really good access controls around it. Because if you have Claude and ChatGPT accessing all of your bank accounts and accessing all of your files, I mean, it's basically a super high risk employee that you have at your whim, right? And that employee is at risk of getting compromised. So you need to make sure you're locking it down as well as you possibly can with two-factor authentication and trusted devices like we talked about earlier. And then thirdly, anything that AI can do, it can do it at a much faster, larger degree than a human being. So if you're giving AI access to your systems, like for instance, if you decide to give AI access to your files and your SharePoint and your OneDrive, and one of your employees is asking your AI a question, whatever permissions your employee has is basically the same permissions the AI has. So if that employee accidentally has permissions to a folder he shouldn't have access to, maybe an HR folder or an accounting folder he shouldn't have access to, then his Claude does and his ChatGPT does. So when he asks a question of those AIs, it's going to pull information he really shouldn't be able to see unless you have your permissions locked down correctly. So that's the third really big one I like to make sure people focus on when they're setting these things up.
And we're seeing AI on just unprecedented levels with techniques that are so sophisticated. It's just to the naked eye, it's absolutely indiscernible between what's real and what has absolutely been spoofed. I'll give you an example on this is the voice cloning that's taken place today. I mean, it has gotten so prevalent and widespread that it just takes about 3.5, 4 seconds to get really an octave or a timbre, get your voice cloned that can then be in turn be used to say anything. In the context of what we do for a living over here at SixLock, protecting our clients by getting them out of the way of all the traditional methods of moving money, that includes callbacks. And those callbacks can absolutely be a spoofing of one way or another. It could be the client's voice or the banker's voice calling back to verify numbers and information. And we all know that it's about diversions. It's about creating a diversion between payer and payee, an instance for what we do for a living. It's just amazing to see this. In fact, it got such a good attention that Sam Altman was speaking towards the Fed here a while back, and he raised his hand and said, don't do callbacks anymore. You have to stop this. I mean, this threat is real and they're really good at it. So I would suggest that the callbacks be replaced by another method. And so anyway, that we're really focused on that here because that is a big step, or traditionally really believed. There's a lot of trust around that callback and traditional methods of transactions, right, between payer and payee.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to trust anything at this point. I mean, you can get on a Zoom with somebody and on video with them, and that video could be entirely fake, could be entirely AI. And like you mentioned, you can clone somebody's voice in 10 seconds. I mean, they have all these scams where people are calling, claiming to be people's loved ones, scamming them out of money on the personal side. And then obviously it's happening as well on the business side. But, we've even used AI ourselves to test some of our clients. Like we created a voice agent with 11 labs, and we had it call a bunch of employees at one of our clients and pretended to be one of our employees to get them to basically give up their password over the phone, right? It was a red teaming exercise to see how good their security awareness training was. And some of them fell for it, and all of them thought it was a human being. So the stuff is incredible now. It's very hard to discern.
Man, that is spooky stuff. I mean, but it's valuable training. They won't do that again.
Exactly.
Cloney is another one. Now, this is an app that I found on the App Store that is just off the shelf stuff. I mean, I don't have to be any type of I don't have to be in the software business at all or anything like that to have this and to set myself up as someone cloning somebody else. It's that easy. It's fast. It's a little scary. But look, hey, it was interesting. I went down this rabbit hole one time of asking some folks on Reddit, like, hey, who's using this for like commercial or like purposes, obviously above board or in business or in commerce, really that's meaningful, right? That really helps, like, it's driving results or specific purposes. And it was really interesting. It kind of came back, and then a lot of folks kind of were like leaned into the marketing side of things for using voice cloning to really like start matching voices that are particular ages or demographics that they're trying to reach out to. Whether that's a radio ad where obviously it's just sound only, or if it's online. But it was fascinating to me that, like, man, this is like a business. There's a business out there, and there's legitimacy around it too. It's really a healthy discussion for me. It was it was insightful. I learned a lot from it, but just from sharing ideas and really asking good questions around, like, how does this work? How often do you use this? But it's prevalent, and it's obviously, look, it's cut both ways, right? It's a great tool to have for, commerce purposes and marketing reasons, but man, also bad guys can get it too.
Yep.
So one of the things we talked about with a prior guest was, this education is really important. This evangelizing the concept and spreading the word and letting people know this is a real deal, and then educating them on the things that they should be doing. But there's always weak links. Right. And the weak link can be particularly susceptible to cloning and spoofing type of stuff here. Because I mean, we all have those people in our lives who can't tell the difference between something that's clearly AI on Instagram or whatever. That's not a real thing. That cat did not do that. I swear, Mom, that's fake. I swear. But, and it's not all generational, like older folks or whatever, but when you look at the classic, PE firm structure, you got a GP, which most likely is going to be a little more locked down, right? They're managing a whole bunch of people's money, and they're thinking about it, and they're thinking about the problems we're talking about today. But they've got a bunch of LPs, right? And now some of those LPs might be firms, might be pension funds or whatever that are locked down themselves, but it also might be retired guy who made a bunch of money, who's 75 years old and hasn't been to a corporate cybersecurity or any type of technology planning thing in a while, and has always done business just by picking up the phone or shooting a quick email. What do you do there? Like if you're an organization to make sure, because all those people could potentially be weak links in this process. What do you do there when you have that type of disparate, ecosystem of humans?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the detection side really comes in, because you can't prevent everything. Eventually, something's going to get through. Eventually, somebody's going to be the weak link. You just need to be able to detect it really fast. That way, the impact is lessened, right? I mean, if we reset a password after it's compromised within 30 seconds, it's very unlikely data is going to be exposed, and you're going to have damage with your clients because you're sending out all these terrible emails to them, getting them to click on malicious links or pay malicious payments, right? So the quicker you respond to this stuff, the smaller the impact is. So that's why the detection side's just so critical and so important. But you're right. I mean, typically, if your gates are up high, they're not going to go after you. They're going to go after the people you work with, right? I can't remember exactly what breach it was, but there was a breach several years back where they wanted to get into the specific company. So instead of going after the company, they knew that these employees every day ordered food from this specific pizza place down the street. So they actually hacked the website of the pizza place. So when they went to the website of the pizza place, they were able to get into the system of the primary target. So they're always looking for the weaker link.
That's crazy. That is nuts. That is nuts. So one of the things we've talked about, and I can't remember which one of you guys mentioned this, but you referred to data as the new oil. That sounds like a Toddism. That could be maybe
it's good. It's so true. No, that's all Ray. I'm going to give Ray. That's all Ray.
I don't know.
That was amazing. I mean, it stunned me when he said that. I'm like, whoa, good one.
But it's so true. It's right. Like, everything we do is effectively data now. You've already talked about, the risks of passing confidential information or information that really shouldn't be made public into an LLM, like, the ChatGPT or the Claudes of the world, what have you.
It was the fundamental element. I mean, it's the atoms, basically, it's the molecular, basically, makeup of all of what AI is about today, is about that data, whether it's good data or bad data, that's what you see, what you get kind of thing. But like, it's fundamental, man. No doubt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But like, there's just, it seems like every day you pick up the news or pick up the news. Nobody picks up the news anymore, looks at the news on your phone or whatever, listens to something, and you hear about some new big security threat target, or like we talked about before, state-backed actors doing nefarious type of stuff. What are you seeing like that you guys are monitoring most at Sigma right now that's like, this is the new thing that we really need to be careful of here ourselves, and also telling our clients about, that they need to be aware of, that this might not have been a threat or a pattern, a year or two ago, but right now it's like a really big deal?
Yeah, I would say kind of top of mind right now is just one of the main ways people typically get into your systems are through flaws in computer software. We call them vulnerabilities, right? And every month, these manufacturers of the software like Microsoft and Adobe, they release patches to address all of these flaws in their systems. And when you patch that, you keep the bad guys out. Well, that monthly patching cadence is just not going to cut it anymore, because I'm sure you've heard of Mythos, the new AI system that Anthropic came out with. That system is able to find vulnerabilities at a much faster pace vulnerabilities that people don't even know exist. Just by pointing, that AI system at the software, it can discover all these vulnerabilities people didn't even know about. So as soon as these vulnerabilities are coming out, they need to be patched almost in real time, right? So that patch cycle, it needs to quicken the pace quite a bit, right? You can't be doing that on a monthly basis anymore. And any systems that are exposed to the internet, they're eventually going to get compromised because of that pace of those vulnerabilities and those exploits. So we're really just trying to take everything off of the exposure at the edge as much as possible, trying to not have any systems that are exposed directly to the internet, and just doing what we can to really quick up the pace of that patching cycle for those vulnerabilities. So that's kind of what's top of mind for us right now.
Yeah. I've always wondered this, and might be the best person to maybe answer this question because I've never talked to somebody who has your type of experience before. So we hear about these ransomware attacks, right? And they basically come in and lock down your system, and suddenly you can do nothing. You can't access your bank accounts. You can't do anything. Is there something that people can have in place for, like, call it a backup emergency, like stability, I can still do business type of, like, is it like a completely separate, like, air-gapped computer system or whatever? Or is there like hey, this system's just never connected to that network. It's still network capable. Like, what are some things people can do for, like, hey, look, man, like, I can't all of a sudden wake up one day and find out somebody got in and locked us out?
Yeah, I mean, on the prevention side, we deploy something called endpoint detection and response. And you can think of that kind of like your next generation antivirus, but it just does so much more than what the antiviruses of the old days used to do. It detects patterns of behavior and things like that are just a lot better at detecting something like that and preventing it from, happening in the first place. But if you do find yourself compromised, the first thing you're going to want to do is make sure you have good backups. And those bad guys know you have backups, right? So they're going to be going after those backups so that you have to pay that ransom. So you do want to have backups that are off the network and what we call immutable, right? It's something that cannot be deleted. Even if they have access to the system, they're set up in such a way that even with administrator privileges, you cannot delete that data. So it will always be there and you can recover. So having a good disaster recovery plan in place, having good backups, whether it's on-prem or off-site, it's absolutely the key to surviving one of those types of attacks. Of course, these days they have something called double extortion. So not only are they keeping you from accessing your own data, but then they threaten to expose that data too, right? So they say, all right, well, you can recover your data from your backups, but now we're going to publish all this data on the dark web. And then we're going to publish all this data and send it to journalists and tell everybody that you were compromised and expose all of your clients' private data. So even if you do end up getting your backups back up, it's still not a good time for your company.
No, this is terrible.
I feel like a good time at all. There's nothing good about that at all in there. Sleepless nights, hand wringing, calling your insurance. I mean, there's so many trails you're going down. And it's a race against time. I feel just timing. There's a deadline on this, right, Ray? I mean, this stuff, like you're on the clock.
Absolutely. I mean, some people will even negotiate with these guys. I mean, some insurance companies have people that are dedicated to negotiating with these people. And sometimes they're actually negotiating to try to get the ransom lower to the point to where, their insurance will just pay it or they'll pay it so that data doesn't leak out. There are two schools of thought on that, right? Like some people are like, you got to do what you got to do to survive. So you pay the ransom, but other people are like, well, you pay it, they're going to come back. They're going to hit you again, and they still have your data. There's no guarantee they're actually deleting that data. And then from a macro perspective, you're just making these guys continue to do this because it's lucrative for them, right?
Right.
Absolutely crazy.
Is your advice to customers is never pay?
I say never pay, but at the end of the day, I'm not a business owner, so I don't know what it feels like to know that all of my employees' livelihoods are on the line. And, I understand sometimes you got to do what you got to do, but my advice is put good protections in place and have good recovery methods in place before this happens, so you don't have to make that tough call.
Right. Yeah. Tough decision, man. No doubt.
And don't just assume that it can't happen to you, because it's kind of always jokingly say about, when we had the pandemic and people were I did all the things and I still got COVID. It's like, yeah, because it was a pandemic. You were going to get it, right? This type of stuff, like at some point in time, something will get hacked or there will be some attempts to get in. And so making sure you have the right protections in place is incredibly important.
Absolutely.
Well, This has been awesome. I do feel like we should have ended more on a lighter note. Maybe that rum discussion should have happened here. What is your favorite rum cocktail? How about that? We'll end it with what's your favorite rum concoction?
I don't know. I'm not a big rum guy, from being honest, but
fair enough.
Yeah, I'll take a good tequila any day. Margarita.
Okay.
Like that.
My drink.
All right. Feel it.
There you go. You like your tequila straight up, like on a big rock, like a reposado or something.
I'm not that hard for it. Yeah. I used to
bad.
drink whiskey like that, but these days I just like my margaritas.
Yeah.
You know,
No doubt about it. I had a really good dark and stormy here a while back.
Oh, those were pretty good. Yeah.
Very tasty rum drink. You know, I really digged how that kind of hit. Sitting kind of near the beach, I'm like, okay, I'm all right.
Yeah.
Plus, you get the copper mug, which is just so awesome. I was going to say the doctor story. This is one of my favorites. I actually saw somebody having one the other night. We're at a restaurant. I looked over and I saw the dark and stormy copper mug show up. I'm like, oh man, now I'm going to be craving this too. So, anyways, all right. Looks like Mike's going to get to the packy, as we say up in the Boston area. That's what.
Well,
it's called
I'll be
the
on the
packy.
beach next week, so maybe I'll have a little bit.
Sure.
More. Thank you
That
guys.
sounds good. All right, this has been fantastic. So, Ray Mitchell, people can find you on LinkedIn, active there. And then sigmainfo.com is the website. Anything else you want to plug other than your awesome vacation?
Nah, I think that's it. Yeah. And if you have a breach, hit us up. If you don't want to have a breach, hit us up.
There you go.
I like that.
They are your guys. They'll take care of you. No doubt about it.
Fantastic.
Right.
Stuff.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much for listening to and or watching this episode of the 6x6 Lock Podcast. It's always fantastic to have you with us. Huge props to Ray Mitchell for coming on the show right before his vacation to share his wisdom and insights about cybersecurity and what you can do to protect your firm and your clients. And of course, also, huge thanks to Ray for putting me in the mood for some rum drinks and maybe a margarita or two. Awesome, awesome stuff. Now, as I mentioned at the top of the show, please do make sure you subscribe to the 6x6 Lock Podcast on your preferred podcast platform. And, be nice to each other. We'll see you next time on the 6x6 Lock Podcast. See ya. Bye.